Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad RAHMAN. My metric number is 2012205. So today I'll be presenting about al-aql and fallacies. So here's the table of contents of what I'll be presenting. So I'll be presenting by the definition of al-aql, followed by fallacy and the definition of fallacy as well. And then the two types of fallacy, formal and informal, which I'll get onto in a bit, and how to deal with fallacy as a Muslim. So the definition of al-aql. Al-aql originally came from the Arabic word aqlun ya'aql, which can be translated in Google Translate as mind makes sense. But this might not make sense to any of you, so I'm going to say in a simple definition, which is to reason. So early Islamic scholars in Islam, especially those that were the companions of Prophet Muhammad SAW and the disciples of these companions, have come up with their own definition, interpretation of al-aql. But they have come up with so many definitions, and many of them share some similarities. It just boils down to only four definitions. The first definition is a natural gift that's given to humans ever since they were born, allows them to receive, send, and understand information. The second one is to understand the obvious facts around us, the facts that you cannot disprove, that's already accepted universally. Like, for example, we need air to breathe, we need food for nutrition, so on. And number three, it's about the experience that's gained by doing something new. So when you're doing something that's usually outside your comfort zone, okay, and you learn from it, and the experience of doing this thing, this is what we call also al-aql. And the last but not the least is the ability for one to control themselves based on what their heart desires. So, for example, let's say if you're going out with your friends and you see that they're smoking or they're probably drinking a bit of alcohol, okay, you feel like you want to do it because you don't want to feel like a fish out of water. But in your heart, you know that it's haram, it is morally wrong, and you should not do it. And you should stay away from these friends. So when you restrain yourself from these activities and also try to avoid mingling with this such a group of friends, that also is what we also call al-aql. Now, the major organs in our body that are responsible for al-aql is the brain, which is for reasoning, and the heart, which is normally for the will and the desire of doing a certain action based on the facts that you have inside your brain. Fallacy. Now, according to Oxford Dictionary, fallacy is defined as a failure in reasoning which renders an argument invalid. So, for a simple definition, it's basically when someone is providing the argument to the listeners, all right, but they make a mistake in the argument, so their argument falls flat and becomes invalid. There are two kinds of fallacies. One of them is formal, and another one's informal fallacies. So, what is a formal fallacy, if you ask? According to Roy T. Cook, formal fallacy is defined as a flaw in argument that depends on the logical form when the structure of the argument violates rules of deductive inference. In simple terms, that means that when someone's presenting the argument to somebody else, the argument is not presented in a logical or coherent manner. Instead, it's all messed up. All the points are like, they're all messed up, right? So the argument falls flat. And that's how it becomes a formal fallacy. Informal fallacy, on the other hand, according to Roy T. Cook as well, it's basically a flaw in the argument and it's traceable to the meanings of the non-logical expressions contained in the argument. So in layman terms, it basically means that when someone's presenting an argument to the audience, okay, and they have many points in the argument, it's all logically presented. There's no problem with the flow of the argument, the flow of the points, sorry. But their points are either irrelevant or factually incorrect. So the argument still falls flat. And that's why we call it informal fallacy. Now, how to deal with fallacy as a Muslim. So because of social media, word of mouth, and magazines and books, newspapers, so on, so we have access to a whole load of information out there. So I got 3 tips that will help you guys to deal with fallacies. The first tip is to ask yourselves where do you get information from, whether it's from social media, whether it's from mouth, whether it's from magazines. It relates to the next tip, which is to assess how reputable the source is. Okay, if you want to assess the reputability or the credibility of the source, you should look for reviews of actual professionals and experts of that particular field, those who have actually researched and have qualifications, like PhD qualifications in the field. If you can see that the reviews are good, that means that the source is very likely to be valid. If it's, poor reviews, so the source is likely to have fallacies within it. And last but not the least is try to verify the information you obtain from the source with other sources. Try to see if they're, consistent. If there are some inconsistencies between, then try to observe or scrutinize them, why they're inconsistent with that, and so on and so forth. So inshallah, you as a Muslim, we can avoid such fallacies when we're looking for information online. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad AKBAR bin AZMI. My metric number is 2017805. We'll briefly talk about what is AKBAR city, what is types and specification, and also its importance. So by its definition that translated from the Arabic words to English, AKBAR city defined as true report and technically the main authentic sources in religion, which is Islam. So everything that connected with religion practices must be came up with the evidences and proof from the main source, which is Quran and Sunnah, and also supported with ijma and qiyas whenever the cases not stated as in the Quran as a guidance. So it is highly compulsory, recommended. So the first type of khabar sadiq is, the first one is al-maktub bi-sidqihi, which is confirmed with its truth, and the second al-maktub bi-kidbihi, which is mean confirmed with its lies, and also the last one is ma la yuqta bi sidqihi wa la kidbihi, which is mean ambiguous, either right either wrong. So if it is ambiguous, just put aside and take the confirmed one. So I mentioned just now why we must refer to the Quran and the Sunnah with the truth interpretation by our ulama, because Quran and Sunnah is the ultimate true report from Allah with 100%, and also Sunnah Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by a strictly censorship system to remain the authenticity, which is the first one is Tisalus Sanad, which is mean connected change. Next, kasratul rijal fi kulli tabaqat, the number of reported true is in every age or qurun. So next, ittifaquhum hatta mustahil al kadhib, impossible tended to deceive with that huge number of reporters. And the last is mustanadu ala al hawas al khams, which is mean through one from the 5 main senses. So what is relationship in Muslim daily matters? It is to refute Orientalist deceitful proclaim on the authenticity of Islam main sources. Like the Sunnah, they claim that it is made after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is passed away. Second, make people realize, aware and decide carefully what they deal with, and also not to blindly follow the false news whenever they are standing. And last but not least, I'm gonna ask you all, even buying a phone, it must be the true and original one. So how can in our religion we just follow? So by summary, all of this must be the authentic one and connected to the main sources. I think that's all from me. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam bisawab. We move to the next presenter. Thank you.
So we are going to talk about al-hawas or senses. So basically we have to learn about this because the core of Islamic critical thinking is knowledge. And to seek for that knowledge, we use our senses as one of the means of such. So we use our senses to develop better contemplation, reflection, understanding, and reasoning. And these are the basic external senses that we know. And these are also deeper senses like memory, imagination, and instinct. And instinct is also called as eternal senses. And these are the proof that the Quran considers that sense can also be used as means of knowledge, but not as the primary sources of knowledge, which Allah has given us a hearing to recognize voice, sight to see visible things, and hearts to meaning reason. So should be a person can distinguish what is harmful and what is beneficial. And the more a person grow up, the more his ability and senses develop gradually, and that is supposed to enable him to worship his Lord. And then this is the proof that Quran encourage people to use their senses to understand and ponder. For example, like the camel, we can see it's a very strong animal, powerful, gentle, and they can carry heavy loads. And also the sky, which has been hanging without any rope and without falling. And lastly, how the complete creature where the camels walk on the earth and surrounded by the mountain, and also above them is the sky. So these are the proofs of power of the creature. So how can we use our senses to better our life? For example, to recover from the pandemic. So these are 3 little steps that you can apply to help you, to guide you, but not to help you solve your problem. And you can also find another step that can help you as well. The first one, purify our hearts and attention. Firstly, set our good intention to do for the sake of Allah, because we will feel something if we do bad things. But the challenge is that our last. So if we put our last before anything else, then Allah will not help to guide us. So set a good intention. Then think of a way to achieve that goal. So before we do anything, we need a knowledge. So try to seek knowledge. But the most important thing is we have to accept it with our heart. So if our heart is not willing to then think, then we don't even want to think about it. And then the third one is amal. So after we have take that knowledge, we should use it. We should put it into action. For example, like a lot of students practice skills for justice and engineers to create things that will help people's life. And the benefit is that if we put everything for the sake of Allah, we put our intention for the sake of Allah, so we do things that are allowed in Islam, and we protect ourselves from things that are forbidden from us. So did humans apply their senses? Very good. So this is one of example of person, a Malaysian, who apply his senses. So this is Adiputra Abdul Ghani, and he is very famous for his genius brain. And then around 12 years old, he already had his program, his own program called Arithmetic. So in one of his interview, he said that he gets his rainbow formula from pondering the rainbow. He said that when he looked at the rainbow in the sky, and he remembered that Quran urged Muslims to ponder about the creation. So he used that idea of a rainbow to create his own formula. So basically he used his heart, he accepted the truth from the Quran, and then he used his brain, his genius brain, his ability to create a formula, and then he put it into action, and that formula really helps everyone, students, especially me as well. So that is all from me. Thank you.
Quran and Sunnah as true report and its role in our daily life. Quran, an important source of guidance for every Muslim. The Quran serves as a source of divine instruction, its revelation to the Prophet Muhammad, as well as his practical execution of the revelation, completes God's bounty for humanity by presenting us with an eternal belief and value system. The Quran's main message is to believe in one God and not to associate him with partners, to avoid sin and to live a life devoted to earning God's pleasure. It is the only revealed book that still exists today in exactly the same form and content as when it was first revealed. The Quran's spiritual message includes practical injunction directed at the general well-being of human beings, society, and the environment in which we live. Sunnah is the second source of Muslim code of conduct. It is just like Quran, a source of jurisprudence. The Sunnah and Quran are used complementary because one cannot practice Islam unless with reference to the two sacred texts. The Sunnah means or contain the words and deeds of the Prophet of Allah. Sunnah therefore play an important role helping the Muslim interpret the Quran and apply in their daily life. So Quran and Sunnah has impact on our daily life. We all know that there are many verses in Quran say about this, and there are a lot of Sunnah in our daily life to apply in marriage, education, gender equality, appearance, our relationship with nature and animal, and many more. Lastly, guidance is in the hand of Allah. If Allah will, He could guide all of mankind. For there is nothing that He cannot do on this earth or in the heaven. Nothing happen in His dominion except that which He will.